We're continuing the series where heaven meets earth, and we've been looking at the tabernacle and the temple. So there's one verse from Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16. Paul, writing to the Christians in Corinth, he says to them, "Don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple, and that God's Spirit lives in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is sacred, and you are that temple." 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 16. People writing about the Bible say that that is the most significant statement in the New Testament about the church. It underlines how important the local church is to God. Let me repeat that. That verse is one of the most significant statements in the New Testament about how important the church is to God and how significant it is in his plan of salvation. Let me start with a story. It's against myself, also includes my wife, but it's my problem too. So I asked Fiona to do some sewing for me to make something. So she got the sewing machine out, but she had to change the bobbin. And put the bobbin in. It did not work. So tried and tried, didn't work. So called me in. "Oh, the machine is not picking up the thread from the bobbin." "Oh, okay, let me read the manual." "Okay, still not working. Let me take it apart a little bit." "Still not working. Let me make a few adjustments here." "Still not working. Okay, let's go to YouTube." So I watched so many YouTube videos of people how to thread up a sewing machine and problems with it. Still not. So that was about 2.5 hours on Friday night. So we went to bed thinking, I'm going to think about this sewing machine all night. Got up Saturday morning. Let me see if I can get this sewing machine working. Another hour, taking bits out, adjusting, changing. Turned a page on the manual, and normally the sewing machine turns that way. When threading the bobbin, turn the handle this way. And we hadn't read the manual. And I'd spent 4 hours and we'd been worrying, why is this not working? And we'd read up to a certain point, turn 2 more pages, turn the handle towards you. And it's the old adage which we say in so many situations, read the manual. And it works. So, when we're talking about the church, read the manual. What is the church meant to be? How is it meant to function? And if we read the manual, it's why we as the King's Church in Wisbech, it's why we don't do flower festivals. It's why we don't sell things at the back to raise money for the church. It's why we don't have one person in charge doing everything. And it's certainly why we don't follow the morals and ethics of the world, because we follow what the manual says. And when we're talking about the local church, Paul was concerned for the church in Corinth, and he says to them, you must be very careful how you build. If you build on the wrong foundation, other than the person of Jesus Christ, it'll all crumble. And he goes on to say, in the same, what we call chapter 3, that when people have built a local church, that work will be tested by fire. And some of the work and some of the effort that's been put in will just be proved to be irrelevant and wasteful and not in line with what God's purpose was. So it's follow his design. And we've noticed with the tabernacle and the temple that when God said build this, build a tabernacle, build a temple, he gave very precise instructions. This is the dimensions, this is the material, this is how it's meant to function. So if God did that for the tabernacle and the temple, why wouldn't he do that for the church as well? So we're not at liberty just to say, well, we'll do it this way. Because God has said what the church is and what it's there for. Paul says to the church in Corinth, I planted the seed, I gave you the word of truth, but Apollos came along and he watered it, he nurtured it, but it is God who gave the growth. And the church in Corinth at the time was quite a large congregation. But now Paul has heard that there are problems in the church. Can you imagine that a church has problems? Personality problems, moral problems, doctrinal problems. So he's addressing these problems. Now, you might remember last week, if you were here last week, and the lovely demonstration of the firework, and we were talking about safeguarding, but one of the points we were saying that what's inside comes out. And as people, all our life's experiences have been stored in us, and that's my life. I display, I exhibit the person I am until I come to Christ. And then a new residence, a new person comes in and fills my life. And Jesus says, I will come in and fill your life. And so we've been changed. So it's not just my life. It's now like the life of Jesus in me. And we're being transformed to be the people of God. And that really is the meaning of where heaven meets earth, that Christ dwells within us. Christ in you, the hope of glory. But in Corinth, some of the people are reverting to their old ways. In fact, he says to the people, he said, you're not acting like Christians, you're acting like just mere people. You're behaving in your old ways. And there's rivalry. Oh, I'm following Paul. I'm following Apollos. I'm following Peter. There's division and there's dissension. And there was always the problem of wrong teaching. But he says to them, verse 17, which is a very strong verse, if you're behaving in a way that will destroy what God is building, if anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. Goodness me. This underlines how important the local church is. If people want to come and destroy what God is building, God will deal with that. So we expect trouble from outside. Jesus said that. In the world, you're going to be an alien culture. We expect trouble from the outside, but the real problem is trouble on the inside. Paul, when he writes to Galatians, he says, the one throwing you into confusion will pay the price. And Peter says, they will be paid back for the harm they have done. God takes